Pranav, thank you. Hi, everyone again. Pranav was talking about the numbers a little bit, and I want to change it a little bit and talk about the words. So what I want to focus on is the disclosures. So the tone of what companies are saying and what they're saying in words again, and not necessarily in numbers. So following the example that Pranav just had for SIC 5812, the restaurants again, what I did was I looked at the last 3 months and looked for the word inflation. And in it, meaning I get obviously all the results for the inflation. And let's start here with Del Taco restaurant. So in their earnings release, they're talking about sorry, I just moved away from it. So they talk about commodity inflation of about 2% or the 5% for the fourth quarter. They talk about labor and related inflation of about 6%. You'll see that this theme of labor inflation shows up in other places. So this was the 8K or the earnings press release. Looking at the MD&A section, they're talking about something similar. Again, under the labor costs, they talk about continued wage inflation. Another restaurant that I want to mention here is Chipotle. Again, looking at their earnings press release, and in this case, they mention the impact of COVID-19 and inflationary staffing pressures. So again, the theme that I mentioned before around labor. Now, if you were interested in the numbers for inflation, so what I showed a second ago around the ranges, these ranges that the companies are offering around inflation, one thing you could do is that CalcBench has an earnings press release query, and in it, what I'm doing is I focus on Del Taco just for the example, a single company. And then I looked for a label that contains the text inflation. So different numbers related to inflation. And these are the results you get. And this is interesting in 2 levels. So one is obviously looking at the numbers. The other thing you would see here is that I didn't restrict it to any history. So they have mentioned it in the fourth quarter of 2018. Then it only in essence appears in the beginning of 2021. Now, by the way, when you're looking at these numbers, if you wanted to know more about these, you can hover over and click on trace here. And in essence, you get the range like I showed you before. But you get the numbers, which you can obviously download and analyze, or just the hits of when companies are mentioning these numbers. But regarding a systematic view of this, Angelo later would show you a little bit more about on ways to extract this type of data. So we spoke about inflation. Moving a little bit to other examples. What I did here was staying with the same SIC code, so staying with 5812, the restaurants. What I want to do here is actually look at El Pollo Loco. And here I'm looking at their 8K. And they talk about the fact that the company, the restaurant industry continues to work through the supply chain challenges. So obviously what I did here, I'm looking for the word supply and the word challenges within 10 words, trying to capture variations of exactly the supply chain challenges, but you can obviously customize this to whatever you want to look for. So El Pollo Loco again, looking at these supply chain challenges. Now, another example that we can look at is BJ's Restaurants. BJ's Restaurants are talking about challenges here, talking about supply chain shortages here, And in general, they're looking at the tone again, which I think is interesting. So the offensive mindset, focusing on top line growth while managing through the industry labor, inflation, and supply chain challenges triggered by the pandemic. So the link between COVID and the supply chain issues, and again, the focus on, or the link that we're actually discussing throughout the hour today, the link between the labor shortages and inflation. Now, one thing that I think is interesting is that you see a theme potentially coming up, but the theme is not necessarily uniform, in the sense that if we look at another company, BurgerFi, for anybody who's into burgers, they are actually discussing something different. They say that they did not experience any supply chain difficulties. Now, it's true that the statement is as of September 30th. Now, by the way, this was filed 4 days ago, so it's not old in filing terms, but they have not experienced any material supply chain difficulties. And this is interesting because later, when I transfer it to Alex, you'll see that the impact of this is not uniform throughout all industries and all companies. So I spent a couple of minutes talking about food, which most people like. But let's just move to another group of companies, looking at a different SIC group, in this case 4213, so trucking. Again, I was looking for the same thing still for the last 3 months, looking for supply and challenges within 10 words. And here there are a couple of examples that we can look at. One that I liked was this PAM. Our driving associates deserve a lot of respect. So what I found interesting in this is that although they don't talk about the importance of labor specifically by talking about the driving associates, you can clearly get the idea that they care deeply about their driving associates, and maybe that's linked to labor shortages or labor issues that we found in other cases. Another example, Werner, similar. They have they're talking about unprecedented supply chain and labor challenges. Yet another example, JB Hunt. JB Hunt is talking about supply chain fluidity challenges. Now, JB Hunt is interesting because we see the words here, and I will conclude now and transfer it to Alex, and Alex is going to look at JB Hunt a little more closely, and we'll get maybe a different picture than the one we discussed until now.